I do have a scripted introduction, and I will get to that. But I was just thinking about it this morning prior to the event kicking off, and with some reflection, I felt an excitement because I reflected on the preparation it's taken to get to this point today. We started thinking about our marketing events back in January when we were with the WSO2 marketing team in Colombo. And back then, we didn't know what 2020 was going to bring and what we were going to face. But despite the fact that it's converted into an online series, it's not that it takes a lot less back-end organizing. So quite a lot to get to this point. And we've really applied our minds in terms of coming up with a concept that will bring value to you as attendees, and we thank you for joining us. This is converting a one-day or maybe a couple of one-day events into what's essentially a series that's going to run over 3 weeks, with 2 per week, and I'll get more into that detail later. Oh, and by the way, we do have a 1-week break that week of 28 July. And we as DeARX are really excited and privileged to have 2 senior people within the WSO2 business join us for the event. And in both Paul and Prabhat, many people are familiar with Paul. Certainly he was in Johannesburg with us at our summit last year. But someone that people who are close to WSO2 will know, but maybe not as well, is someone who's been involved in the identity and access management part of the WSO2 business, I think, since the outset. And with the recent restructuring, is now heading up that business as the VP and GM. And them and our other speakers, all have day jobs. And so to pull something like this together, and we're not professional marketers or speakers. And so a big thank you from my side. To all the guys, and then to our customers who also give us the opportunity of showcasing a bit of the work that we've done in their environments. Grateful to them too. Okay, so let me kick into the formal introduction, and that I have scripted. So let me run through that. So maybe just some housekeeping items. The Q&A or chat feature is what we'll use for posting of any questions. And we've got a questions moderator who will do his best to either address the questions directly or route them in real time to the speaker, maybe hold it over to the Q&A session at the end, of the session. Or we might get back to you after the event. So we won't enable audience speaking today, so any questions will be reserved for that chat. But on Thursday in the deep dive, we'll accommodate that open conversation. The event is being recorded, and all video and slides will be published on the DeARX events page, which you can navigate to from the DeARX homepage. If you any specific needs or questions, you can reach out to us via the Contact Us service on the DeARX website. And it'll be great if you followed us on LinkedIn, because that way you've got better ongoing communication in terms of future events, etc. Those that attended the event last year will remember how hard I pushed on completion of surveys. This year I've spared you from any surveys. But if you do have any questions or comments or suggestions, I think you know where to find me, please feel free to communicate. In 2019, we hosted our first ever WSO2 summit at the luxury Hyatt Regency in Rosebank, Johannesburg. And the event was attended by more than 100 people who, as I said earlier, enjoyed presentations from, amongst others, WSO2's co-founder and CTO, Paul Freemantle, DeARX's Christhonie, a range of product specialists from across the WSO2 platform spectrum, and featured case studies last year from Discovery Vitality and FNB. Over a year later, a lot of the material shared at that summit remains interesting and relevant, so feel free to look at the events page on the DeARX website, where you will find archives of those presentations. being 2019, we had the pleasure of not only enjoying an in-person event, and I think that's a new term developed this year, I hadn't heard it before, but interacting socially over some cocktails at the Hyatt's Inner City Garden Sanctuary. I think certainly remote work has its advantages, but I think we'd all agree that some cocktails at the Hyatt Cigar Bar would be a welcome conclusion to any day's work right now. So while we can't provide you with that, at least not in 2020, we've done our best to structure a conference that acknowledges the reality of the time, leverages the available technology, and best aligns to your busy schedules. It will become clear later today, but today's agenda will take you on a journey totaling 38,117 kilometers. So don't say that you didn't get any opportunity to travel in 2020. A difficult balancing act we always face when running our conferences is structuring an agenda that best aligns to the varied needs of a diverse audience. And the most basic split is the one between the business level and the technical level. And in 2019, we addressed this by making our May Summit a more business level and oriented event at the expense of the more hardened techies, and then running 2 full-day workshops in October, which try to be more interactive and tech-oriented. Many of you were at all or one of those events, and we welcome you back today. In planning for this year's event and knowing it had to be online, we figured that attracting and holding your attention in the webinar for a full day would be difficult and impractical. So for that reason, we've tried to balance the business and tech elements with short 2-hour sessions that will allow you to invest short bursts of time in the conference over a 3-week period, and thereby hoping to align better to your busy diaries and project pressures. The series is essentially a 3-part event focusing on API management, customer identity and access management, and cloud, all from a WSO2 perspective. We've been graciously supported by 2 leading South African digital businesses and include case studies from them in each event. The business-oriented audience is likely to be satisfied in what we call our primary sessions, such as today, and the more technical people are encouraged to join our interactive sort of breakaway deep dive sessions each Thursday at the same time, 9 o'clock. But that by no means excludes anyone from participating and pursuing a line of questioning they might be grappling with. So the focus of today is API management, and our deep dive on Thursday will allow people to get under the hood on the topic and challenge our speakers in any aspect they choose. Our hope is that following this pattern, we'll meet the varied needs you all have while aligning to your business priorities. So today's event, I think, is a beautiful package of vision, of practical insight, and product, and it's all neatly closed and summarized with a short Q&A at the end. I think strictly speaking, the agenda is about 1.5 hours, and then there's sort of a Q&A, so we've probably been 1.5 hours to 2 hours in total. So as I've said, we're privileged and excited to once again welcome back WSO2's co-founder and CTO, Paul Freemantle. He'll share his current thoughts with us, and for those who attended our summit last year, you will know that Paul is truly an industry leader and visionary whose insights are impactful and lasting. DeARX is blessed with the talent of Christhonie, Geldenhuys, and there is not a customer or staff member he deals with who doesn't benefit daily from their interactions with Christhonie, and he will bring value to today with his practical insights into API management. When all is said and done, the rubber hits the road with the actual software. So while vision and insight are important, they're actually meaningless without a top quality product to enable them. And WSO2's API Manager is not the only product in the market, but in my experience, there's not a customer who uses it that regrets their choice. And WSO2's Stefano Negri will update us on the product, ensuring we're all current on the vision, the market differentiation, and the roadmap. In person would be great, and no doubt we were all missing it, but technology has allowed this event to be brought to you wherever you are by presenters not closer than 1,261 kilometers from their nearest neighbor. I sit in Johannesburg, Christhonie is in Cape Town, Paul in London, and Stefano is in Milan. So This is why, following the sequence of today's agenda, you will be taken on a journey totaling 38,117 kilometers. I did count. So let's not take a real-time conversation and presentation for granted as we discuss what more technology can do to improve and differentiate the businesses we all run today. I'm almost done, and you'll have noticed the lack of the words digital or digitization from this introduction. That despite the series subtitle being Digitizing Business with WSO2. In 2019, we felt we were still convincing some customers of the importance of digitization, but now, in mid-2020, there's no convincing needed. A metric of proof, as if you needed one, is that year to date, the tech-heavy NASDAQ is up 17%, while the S&P is down 2.5%. We've been moving digital for many years, but in 2020, it seems to have become a lot more real, a lot more quickly. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Paul and to get today's presentation going. Paul, just give me a second just to stop my share and do a transition to you. Sorry.
Right. Can you see my screen, Steve?
I'm just trying to get you onto the spotlight as well.
Yes, we can see it. Thanks, Paul.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, Steve, thank you for the very kind introduction. And I concur, it would be lovely to be in the Hyatt in Joburg, enjoying a cocktail with you guys. But that's not to be. However, I think this is pretty cool that we can do this remotely around the world, and I'm hoping it works really well. Hold on, my video's gone. Wait a second. Let me just start my video again. I don't know why it died. There we go. Can you see me? Good. All right. So, I think just to back up what Steve said, we've seen, for example, our WSO2 cloud traffic double in April and May this year because of the pandemic and people going to digital. We have one customer which is a significant healthcare provider in the US, and our APIs help drive their digital and in particular their video consultation system, and they saw an 8,000% growth in traffic in the API layer over a very short period of time. Luckily, the WSO2 technology scaled up beautifully to solve that. What I want to talk about today is how we see the API world and what that means for you as a business trying to navigate this world, and I want to try and provide a different insight, a new way of looking at the world that we're all in, that I hope will help you think of this in an interesting way, open your eyes to some opportunities, and perhaps build some new business model ideas in your mind as well. So the first thing I want to say are that APIs are the products of the 21st century. And we're certainly not the only people to say this, but I think this is really key, which is that we see APIs becoming true business products and not just technical enablers, but actual business concepts that are sold, resold, and make money for companies. And I want to try and dig into that, and hopefully you can see that there are different ways that you get these products. And the first one is that you see directly monetized APIs. So these are our customers, but of course there are other examples from out there in the world. So one of the best known is Twilio. Twilio is a company that sells SMS and voice services as APIs only, and you pay per API call. Each API call has an action in the real world, sends a text message, or helps you call someone up or answer the phone. And Twilio's system is very clear. The business is delivered as APIs, and you pay for APIs. But we also have customers like Fiserv, eBay, Cerner, Applegate, who are doing this direct monetization with the WSO2 API platform. And then we have indirectly monetized APIs. So these are APIs where the API is driving business, but it's driving existing business. So for example, the Bank of New York Mellon is one of the world's biggest asset managers. And what they do is they manage $33 trillion of assets on behalf of pension funds, insurance companies, other banks. And they decided to move all their management of those assets from various sort of old FTP, all kinds of systems. About 6 years ago, they decided to unify on an API-based model. And they built a platform called Nexen. And because they're handling such large numbers of assets, all of this is done digitally, and all of it goes through the WSO2 API platform. So although we're not charging, they're not charging per API call, those API calls are driving genuine business. And then I'm afraid, sorry, my slide, the text has got hidden there. It should say combined physical digital. So these are models where you see companies that are building a physical product like a Jaguar car, and they are adding a digital product alongside it, which is often called the digital twin. And that digital product, the connected car, adds significant value to the physical car and creates a much greater offering. And we have lots of other interesting examples from our catalog of APIs there. And of course, these companies are just a small smattering of examples of people doing these kind of things with our thing. And of course, then there's the backbone for digital transformation API products. So in other words, using the platform to be a backbone for all of the digital transformation. And I think that's important, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that that's where we were 5 years ago. We were in the model where we were saying, okay, we're building a backbone, we're building an ESB and API management layer to help you drive integration. Today, that backbone is now feeding a front-end set of real products that are adding significant business value to the company. So that's really a message I'm trying to get across here, which is that we have the supply at the bottom, and then we have the actual products at the top. And what does that remind you of? Well, hopefully that reminds you of, in real products, we have this concept called an integrated supply chain. And this was really a creation of the 20th century, a massive innovation in the real physical product world, where we put together product lifecycle management, supply chain management, ERP, financials, and logistics management. And we sort of said, okay, we're creating products, we're managing them. We want to into an integrated, connected model so that we know exactly what we have in the supply chain. We can do logistics management. We can really manage our products in an integrated way. So what can we learn from that model for the API world? If APIs are the products of the 21st century, then surely we need to learn something from the 20th century. And what we can learn is that there's a set of disciplines that can be directly mapped from those disciplines of the 20th century. So we had product lifecycle management. We have product lifecycle management for APIs. We had ERP and financials for real products. We have API insights and monetization in the digital world. We had supply chain management, which is how you build your backend and how you integrate your backend. And we need that same integration and enablement of APIs at the back end to create API products. And of course, we had logistics in the supply chain. That really translates into DevOps and management in the digital world. So we have this API supply chain. And this API supply chain is really a key concept that we believe is going to change the way we think about APIs and the way we manage APIs and our whole vision of what we're doing to help you build those API products and take them to market. And if you dig into these areas, you see there's a lot of key capabilities that you need. So let's start at the techie end of it. You know, you need to integrate with your legacy systems, SAP, Salesforce, Oracle, PeopleSoft, many others. You need to connect to healthcare, EDI, and other technologies. You need to do data integration. And increasingly, we're seeing people building real-time APIs and real-time products. And so having event and streaming integration is absolutely a key technology in this space. At the same time, you want to have a highly efficient logistics model. So you need to have continuous integration, continuous delivery pipelines. You want to be able to deploy this in Kubernetes, multi-cloud, and hybrid environments, as well as traditional on-prem. You want to have things like micro gateways to manage integration of your new cloud native services alongside your legacy APIs. And you want to do things like blue, green, and canary deployment. At the business side, you know, these are products. So you want to do things like market testing and lifecycle management of the products. You want to do design and creation of APIs. And what we're increasingly seeing is that we have techie teams building APIs at the back end using CI/CD and very much automated processes. But we have an API product manager whose job is to assemble those APIs into an API product, to aggregate those APIs into something of real value, define a subscription plan, define an onboarding process and a subscription process, and do all those things and put together the documentation, test this out with the market, get feedback, run forums, and so forth. And then, of course, we want to have reporting, billing, analytics, subscription platforms, and so forth to really turn this into a genuine product and monetize it. Now, that may be direct monetization, that may be indirect monetization. And I want to say this kind of digital integrated supply chain, this API supply chain, doesn't mean digitizing existing supply chains. So we're not talking about using digital with your physical product supply chain. Although, you know, I'm not saying that's not part of it, but I want to make sure you really get the idea. This is a genuine metaphor or analogy. This is a new concept. So the integrated API supply chain is a new concept about creating end-to-end digital systems that generate API products and manage them. And just to give you some real examples, so we're seeing supply chains in finance. So open banking has opened up banks, payment gateways to create this new concept of a third-party provider, which is allowing fintechs to create all kinds of new digital products, new API-based products that integrate with both existing banks and offer new opportunities. And, you know, to be honest, Africa has been, I would say, the leading continent in this journey. We have seen amazing things in mobile wallets and for example, WSO2 is very involved in creating a mobile wallet in Kenya, and Kenyan mobile wallets are kind of, I think, the largest per capita usage of digital wallets. This is an interesting case of building a supply chain in the telco industry. So a company called Applegate, which is a very strong partner of WSO2, and we helped set this company up, takes APIs from multiple providers and aggregates them into a bundle, and then sells those bundles to sole providers all through Southeast Asia. And what they do is they do a revenue share. So in other words, they sell a bundle subscription to the sole provider, which creates an easily monetized and accessed bundle of APIs. And then they disaggregate that revenue and share it back with the original providers of the APIs. But what's really interesting is that Applegate is working with Orange, and Orange is working in the Middle East and has created a hub. And so now Orange is buying that bundled API and reselling it to sell providers in their region. So now instead of a two-way revenue share, we have a three-way revenue share. So in other words, Orange takes revenue and shares it with Applegate, and then Applegate shares it with the original API providers. So this is kind of like the emergence of international trade by the Phoenicians in the Mediterranean, 3,000 years ago, when they started plying the Med with goods from Libya to Crete to Naples, and they took those goods across and they traded them, and they became an intermediary. And that's really the kind of, I think, what we mean by products, the idea that you can resell these, sell these, they become fungible, real business value concepts. So I'm not going to talk in detail on our market vision, but we see four big areas where the world is moving forward. We see federation and business models, which I'm going to talk about in a second. We see a strong move to the cloud, both private cloud and public cloud, and multi-cloud and hybrid deployments. We see a significant move towards modernizing development with CI/CD enablement, Kubernetes being used as a development environment. And we see a big shift to polyglot, both at the back end and the front end. So we're seeing not just Swagger, but GraphQL, Async API, gRPC, Kafka, and so forth being pulled together. And I think a really key point that I want to bring in is this, we call it a kind of quantum duality, that you can look at APIs as both a business movement and a technology movement at the same time. And it's really important to keep these two things in mind. And I think our vision of a API-based supply chain is absolutely there. The other thing is this big shift to cloud native. And this is changing the way that we build and think about our platforms. And we're seeing much more async. We're seeing APIs everywhere. We're seeing open source really a very strong player in this cloud native model, and a shift to pay-as-you-go models, whether that's per transaction in the cloud or basing it on transactions in your data center. And products rely on ecosystems. And one of the things I think I was trying to get at earlier throughout this talk is this concept that we're beginning to see multi-party business models emerge in the API world. And if you go to that link, you'll see a whole hour-long talk about this that I gave in Paris at the end of last year. I'm going to just summarize that very quickly. We're seeing all sorts of patterns, and we've so far identified 5 different patterns of how people are using APIs to create and enable multi-party business models, and we call this federation. So, for example, Scania is a massive manufacturer of trucks in Sweden, and they have 1,500 internal systems, and they try to integrate those in a centralized center of excellence type model, and they realized that wasn't possible. So they've decided that instead of doing that, they're going to use a federated internal marketplace and an API product strategy to improve their integration, and that's going really, really well. I talked about Bank of New York Mellon earlier, and one of the things that's really interesting is that they're starting to open up their platform to enable third parties, customers and partners to add API products into their marketplace. So the blue little APIs are theirs, and then now they're starting to allow their partners and customers to add in those red APIs into that picture. and they want to blur the lines and create an ecosystem, and that's really, really interesting. We're seeing a lot of organizations create what you might call a closed group marketplace. So, for example, governments are doing this by allowing several different government departments to kind of equally create a marketplace that makes it feel like you have a single unified view of the world, when in fact it's multiple different parties participating. The fourth pattern we're seeing is where you have a shared revenue marketplace, and we did a project called IdeaBiz that created an API platform where people could share in revenue, and that onboarded nearly 2,000 developers in 18 months and built more than 2,000 apps. I think it was around 3,000 applications built on top of that. And finally, Appigate is a kind of aggregator marketplace where they pull together APIs from multiple parties and resell them as a bundle. And that's, I think, another interesting model. So what I'm trying to say is that, all of these are creating a supply chain of APIs that need management, they need logistics, they need integration, they need front-end product lifecycle management, and they need API insights and monetization. And these patterns, I think, are really inspiring when you think about your business. And I talk to all sorts of CIOs and CTOs all the time, and I see people trying to navigate how they can turn their assets into new digital business models. And I think this is a really good way of looking at it. So I'm not going to talk about it, but we have actually been working on some technology to help enable this federation. This is an open initiative. And if you're interested, just jump in on the GitHub and the mailing list and come talk to us about that. So I've slightly overrun, but I think I started late as well. So I hope that Christhonie, Steve, and Stefano will forgive me. But I just want to say, this is our vision. We believe that our vision is that there's this integrated API supply chain, this digital supply chain, and we want to be the #1 provider of cloud and hybrid services for it. And we have the platform, the single platform that provides all those technologies that you need to do that. So thank you very much. I'm not going to take questions now, but there's a session for Q&A at the end, and I hope you stick around and enter your questions, and you can enter those questions now and we'll get to them later. And once again, I really want to thank Steve and Christhonie and the team for organizing this. And I'm going to now hand back control to the team. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And as always, that was hit the mark perfectly. And thank you for that high level and vision. And I think that key to our businesses is that we're able to connect the sort of the practical of the day-to-day with those kinds of insights in terms of, okay, well, what is the actual overall objective and goal that we're really trying to achieve? And without that connection, we definitely do struggle. So
I really appreciate that, Steve. Sorry to interrupt, but I love that. I think that's a key part of WSO2's vision, is that we don't just work at the high level or just the low level, but we help you to join together those two things. And I think that's absolutely key. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's actually and as I showed in that introduction, it's really what we've tried to put together in the structuring of the actual event. So in terms of these sessions, having that sort of package that's got the vision, the practical from a case study perspective, the product perspective, and then allowing us to get that sort of breakaway session on the Thursdays where we can really get interactive. And hopefully, if we all participate throughout the series, those that do are going to get material benefit from it, which is really what the goal is here. We hit our first real technical snag, and so Stefano, I see you sitting there. I'm going to have to put you on the spot and just shift up the agenda a little bit. So if you can just get yourself prepared to start sharing your slides, we're going to go with the product presentation, and then we'll move over into Christhonie's presentation after that. He's just hit some tech hiccup on his side. Stefano, are you good? You're on mute, so you just need to unmute.
Okay. Okay, now can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes, we can see. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so thank you, Steven, and thank you for introducing me. Here you can find some more contact details. So it would be very great if you can join me, for example, on LinkedIn and get in contact. In my, as Steven said, I would like to brief you on the product updates. And before that, I want to share with you what has been so far our vision, not the market vision that Paul presented, but more exactly what we mean for an API manager. And it's important to consider that so far we have been driven in this journey of API manager from the meaning that for us this means a full life cycle management. For us, a product, an API management product should cover the main use cases which are related to the API management life cycle, which are the use case of an API publisher, which has to connect to a portal or a publisher to design and publish API and make them available on a gateway and make them available to a subscriber. And this is the second use case where a subscriber should be able to search for the API that fit his requirement and get access to documentation and get access, be enabled to, for example, cite sign-on and login and so activate the API, so subscribe the API. And this is the second use case. The third use case is basically the use case of the end user, an application user through the application developed by this API subscriber should be able to invoke the final API. And then there is the fourth use case, which is the use case of the API publisher and the API subscriber that they want to have control over the API they have created or the application they have created. And so they have to be able to have insights or to see what's happening behind the machine and have a full control of their assets and eventually set up alert, etc. So this is not, as you can see, our vision is not the vision of an API gateway or an API portal or API gateway with a portal on top, but the full life cycle management, which cover the four main use cases. And for achieving that, we have developed a product which is complete because this is basically componentized. So all these use cases can be fulfilled by different components. And these components we plan to divide in three main planes. So this, of course, the logical one, the data plane, what the data actually go through between the application consumer to the business services. And here already we have also a key differentiator because we provide this data plane in different flavor. We provide not only the classical centralized API gateway, but we give the possibility to deploy in a microservices approach, with a microservice approach using a micro gateway, or in a if a customer is interested in something like a service mesh, we have also an Istio option to deploy our gateway. And these are controlled by a management plane. A management plane where the first two of the use cases I presented before takes place. So the API publisher, we have API publisher for the API subscriber for the API publisher themselves. So it can be an API developer or an API product manager. And then we have a developer portal you can use to create an API marketplace, and the developer portal are accessed by the API subscriber, can be application developers. And then we have the control plane. And the control plane is the component where the policy created by the API publisher applies. For example, key manager, we are a full integrated key manager for identity, for security policies, and a traffic manager for throttling and for enabling monetization. So this is something that we want to stress, because something that I think we distinguish ourselves in the market of the API management. And having said that, I would like to present you which are the main, in our opinion, the main key differentiators of the point we distinguish us compared to the other operators in the market. And I listed some points. The first two are obvious after the Paul and myself said so far. So Paul presented this API supply chain. So we have now, we claim that we have the instruments to achieve that already now. And we are still progressing in this direction, but already now with the product that we offer, we have this vision of integrated API supply chain. And then the second, also quite obvious after the two previous slides, so our platform is a complete platform for API product manager, API developer, or technical engineer. So it's not a full complete product. And also, Paul discussed a lot of these federations and marketplace. We think we have the instruments for enabling these new business models. Because this new business model means that you have to have, for example, a developer portal. You can connect many API API distributed everywhere. You need to have the possibility to federate identity or manage identity, or you have to have billing functionalities. We have all these capabilities. And also talking about security, identity management, our product has an embedded identity provider with identity management capabilities and single sign-on capabilities. So you can rely on your own identity provider, but we have also, because you can federate it, you can integrate your identity provider, but if you don't have, we have this functionality embedded in the product. And also, compared to other market operator, we support decentralized and centralized runtime. As I show you before, we can provide, for example, a micro gateway. We support, fully support Kubernetes deployment with a dedicated operator. And we strongly recommend multi-cloud deployment or hybrid deployment. And in terms of technology, we also are providing the support for the latest trends. So we mentioned already GraphQL or protocol like gRPC and many other that we also we talk about quickly later. And also, last but not least, we are open source. So this open source, being open source, open the possibility to different approach for using the product. You can start small, start testing, start using it, and then eventually think a bit bigger and involve WSO2 for a full commitment. And another point that we distinguish us is the possibility to, is the flexibility in the deployment. And not only flexibility in terms of distribution of the component that I mentioned before, but the choice between cloud, private, or mixed solution. So you, for example, you can rely on WSO2 multi-tenant share API cloud, which is completely hosted and managed by us. So you don't have to care about the installation, fixing, etc. This is completely handled by WSO2, and what you have to do is to use the services, create the services on top of the infrastructure, use it, and you will pay according to what you use. This is available multi-region and give you the possibility to make any hybrid deployment, the classic hybrid deployment for example, the management plane on the cloud, but the gateway on your premises. And yeah, you can connect your private DC, and the only limitation that you have in this case is a limited size or grade of customization. Completely on the other side, you can deploy your solution on private on-premises. That is completely basically the opposite. It's self-hosted, self-managed, fully flexible, but you have to take in consideration the fact that you have some learning curve to install the product, to manage a product, to set up the fixes, etc. In the middle, we can offer what we call managed cloud, which has a bit of the advantage of both. It's privately hosted, but managed by us. And we as WSO2, we can take care of all the upgrades, patches, installation, etc. So you have still the full control or better control of the environment, but not the pain of the management and troubleshooting, etc. So regarding functionalities, we claim to have one of the broadest portfolio. So for example, our gateway, which is policy enablement point, can count of capacity like protocol handling, transformation, micro gateway deployment, transforming data in services, and as I said, support not only REST, but a wide range of protocol. I mentioned already GraphQL, gRPC, and now we recently introduced AWS Lambda. And security-wise also, we cover basically all the potential need that a customer may have as regards his API management journey, from the standard OAuth 2, what was the initial protocol that we create our product on. Now we extend it with API keys, basic authentication, mutual SSL is included as an option, and also, of course, single sign-on. We support JSON Web Token, and recently we had other functionality that we'll talk in detail later. In terms of business and analytics, you can count on a dedicated component, which is analytics, where you can report the status of the API that are running, the runtime, the API, the app, the big creation, etc. You can count on real-time analytics, and through traffic management, you can enable monetization of your API. We are fully committed to be cloud native as far as possible. So we have, for example, integration for Istio, installation assets for Kubernetes, Docker. We introduce a Kubernetes operator, and regarding, we integrate also our cloud native solution with other cloud native components like Prometheus and Grafana for monitoring. And you can rely on our portal or develop portal or store for creating an API marketplace, for example, or enable monetization, mocking, and recently we introduced a very interesting feature, which is artificial intelligence based recommendation for the development portal. Exactly this is what we introduced in 3.0 version last year, and this year we also already made an upgrade, and recently with these two versions we make really a great step ahead in terms of feature that we can cover. Here you can find a really broad list that I wouldn't go through in detail one by one, but as you can see, it's very we try to cover really all the potential needs for each and every customer. So in 3.0, for example, we introduced, I already mentioned, okay, GraphQL, I already mentioned, we had API keys on top of OAuth2. Very important, we introduced an out-of-the-box integration with Stripe for monetization. So monetization now is a potential ready-to-use features. And in terms of security, we introduced JWT authentication, schema validation, and BOT detection. In terms of business, we introduced the possibility to create API products on top of API. And with the latest version this year, we had, for example, we moved a bit forward in the direction of serverless, for example. This is also a direction that we want to cover even more in the future, integrating AWS Lambda. And also we work a lot in terms of security, integrating API security audit integration through a partner with 42 Crunch. I have already mentioned the development portal also has new features like AI-based recommendation for the developer. And this is significantly relevant when you have created, for example, a marketplace with many API. So this can give the developer, the user of the development portal, easier way to navigate, to search API based on, for example, his preferences that have been stored and built action after action. The mocking functionality, though was already present in the previous version, has been increased with the possibility to create automatically a mock, a stub or a framework of the mock based on the API definitions. And we also increase the functionality of the analytics. The micro gateway feature has a different release cycle. We have the same numbers, but they follow a slightly different release cycle. And we are also, for the micro gateways of a separate component, introduced very recently we are introducing new feature continuously. Yeah. For example, still in 3.0, we introduced, for example, HTTP2 support, again, also schema validation. And this is relevant because micro are immutable. It is important to have a registry where you can, for example, load or store the endpoint. And so we integrate with etcd for service discovery. And also very important, with 3.0 and 3.10, we introduce the possibility to make also for micro gateway, the same for gateway transformation. In 3.0 with Ballerina code, in 3.10 with Java code. Yeah, so now 3.10 support also gRPC. We support a policy hub for transformation. We can integrate natively third-party IDP, and we support also API keys authentication. What about the future? Well, the future, this is intentionally, I left intentionally this slide, which is to have a hook to what Paul said. So we are starting this market vision that is presented from Paul is our polar star for the next releases. And the first main milestone that we have in mind is to introduce this WSO2 API first integration platform, which will be a platform this will be a unified platform which bundles together API management and integration functionalities with the same, using the same tooling, the same DevOps. We expect that this will increase the productivity of the API developers in their journey for creating an end-to-end API between the users and the actual backend. All what is in the middle, so API policies, definition, etc., and integration is covered by one single platform. And this, for example, expect some benefit also where we can drive our customers through our best practice integration patterns. For example, we are strongly recommending an approach which is we call API first integration with several options like bottom up or top down approach. And this will be strongly cloud oriented. So our recommended approach or deployment approach will be on based on management plane or cloud and data plane everywhere. But this is not the only option, but this will be this recommended approach because we strongly believe in cloud-oriented deployment. And yeah, what we expected, it will be not only the tooling, share of the tooling, but share of the management, sharing of stability and tracing between the two main components of this integration platform that will be API management and integration. We expect significant technical benefit for our customers for when it's come to build end-to-end API infrastructure. But this is not only the only milestone for this year. As you can see here, we have a very ambitious plan, especially for 2020, and a clear vision for 2021 and beyond. And for 2020, we will continue releasing new features in the direction that I hope are clear after this my presentation. For example, we already support WebSocket now, but now this is limited to WebSocket client to WebSocket server. We'll introduce a possibility to have a WebSocket proxy for REST API, which will give the possibility to implement new patterns, synchronous to asynchronous pattern. Regarding GraphQL, also we introduced GraphQL in the previous version. Now we realize that for example, the throttling model for GraphQL is not relevant if it's based as it is now on the number of transactions or the bandwidth per second or per minute, because a GraphQL can be very complex. So this introduces a new, let's say, dimension, and the new subscription plans for the GraphQL subscription plan will consider also the complexity of the GraphQL query. We will have, regarding micro gateway, the possibility to create directly instantiate private jet API micro gateway from the user interface. This today is not possible. You have to go through a toolkit, but with a version the experience for create micro gateway will be similar to the experience that create normal gateway. And regarding federation that we discussed a lot so far, we are going to create out-of-the-box integration with third-party identity provider. So I mentioned before that one key differentiator of our product is an embedded identity provider, but we also realize that many companies have already their own tool. And then we want to make it easier, the setup of an external identity provider, and we accomplish this in the next release. We are, of course, also moving ahead in terms of also here federation with other gateway providers. For example, we will have a new Envoy-based API gateway, which will support Envoy. We can basically create the policies and deploy them on Envoy directly instead of our gateway. This is a new feature that will be added to gateway, micro gateway, and Istio. The next release will be a possibility to have an Envoy gateway, and same on this in this direction we will have serverless API gateways. The Istio integration will be upgraded following Istio updates. Istio change that are going on, we will follow Istio in this journey. So we'll create a new integration for Istio, and also this aspect to have our management and control plane being potentially used by other gateway, not only ours, will be enforced when we add this support for open policy agent. So we support open policy agent for creating standard and general purpose policies. In the direction to going beyond Open API standard, we will support a different pattern, different let's say protocol. So we want to support asynchronous API for Kafka and NATS. And regarding vertical, we will have a specific package for fast healthcare interoperability resources. This is a vertical in the healthcare sectors. If you look a bit beyond 2020 and see what will happen in 2021 and later, yeah, we will continue our effort for creating or supporting the possibility to create federated API marketplaces. So we will have we will increase our features for example, a decentralized billing, for having a secure and trustworthy review, and for decentralized API governance, for example. And another significant effort will be to support massive scale API management. We have recently the case of companies that are asking to deploy a large number of API with a not so relevant number of transactions per second. And so we are moving in the direction to support this kind of deployment, for example, removing the file system dependencies and rely more on database dependencies, which can support a larger number of APIs. Regarding analytics and billings, we are moving in the direction to integrate more and more third-party analytics and billings components. As I said before, we are now supporting Stripe out-of-the-box billing. We will support more, and the same in the direction of the quality enforcement that we are already will continue in this effort to, for example, that we support now open policy agent, a new IDP. This effort will continue in the future for extension of newer other third-party provider, and the same in the direction of the discoverability, so service registry, etc. Yeah, and that's all. So thank you for your attention, and as said by Stephen and Paul, we will take care of your question in the last part of this webinar, and be happy to answer as many questions as we can. And okay, and Stephen, hand over to you.
Well, thanks very much. And you know, if I reflect on Paul, if APIs are the products of the future, then you certainly are going to require a robust API management platform. And from what you've presented today, I think I said in my introduction that I'm not aware of a customer having deployed WSO2's API manager and having been unhappy with that choice. But as you look into the future, you know, it's clear that not only does WSO2 have the vision, but there's a lot going on in terms of execution against that vision. So thank you for sharing all of that with us today. Okay, I think Christhonie is good to go. So I'm just going to get the video right for him. And over to you, Christhonie.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you guys. I just want to check, Steve, is my slide deck showing properly before I continue?
Just get to the next slide. I don't know if it's just my view.
Okay.
It looks fine to me, Christhonie.
Okay, super. I think, okay, let's go from there. So thank you, everybody. Today, my presentation is also going to be around the API Manager, and I'm going to take a specific look about how we've implemented this product at one of our customers here in South Africa. And I will sort of share with you sort of the typical challenges that we see with our customers and that we experience with them as well, and how we manage to use the product to derive business value for our customer. So I'm going to do the presentation around sort of 3 role players. I first want to start off by sort of explaining what is the benefit of an API manager in terms of our business. So what are we trying to do with that? Then we'll look at the role of the API developer and how does this product assist that workflow that our staff has to go through. And then we will look from the perspective of an API consumer, the people that need to consume these APIs. So starting at the business side, so maybe let's just have a quick look about why do we think APIs are quite critical to business. So, so it's generally agreed that IT should be an enabler for business opportunities. So APIs have a strategic role to play to make those opportunities possible. So they're not merely technical tools, but they should form a key part of a product and a marketing strategy to digitally transform our organizations. In addition, they should be managed as assets for developers, allowing them to unlock new applications or ways of working to improve our business. So to drive the adoption of these assets, it is then prudent to make APIs easy to find and easy to consume and also reliable to use. So the APIs enable business to combine more multiple software systems into more holistic solutions. Systems that might be within our own organization or the software systems of some of our vendors. And it allows our customers and partners to also integrate with our solutions. Leveraging APIs are then key building blocks to also give us digital transformation strategies. So digital transformation is sort of about embracing the shift in the nature of the supply and demand. And it requires us to overhaul our organization's operational model. So it's not just about cloud or web or a mobile strategy. So APIs are also a great way to help us migrate our brick and mortar businesses to adopt omni-channel business models. So we see that a lot now with COVID happening, where more and more organizations need to rely on their digital assets to engage with their customers and make their businesses accessible. And lastly, API should make it easy to leverage our cloud strategies, which could save the business money in infrastructure costs and also aid in elasticity of our software systems. So there are quite a few benefits that we see by embracing APIs as a whole. So let's have a look at the API manager and where does that play a role. So API management solutions are central to managing our relationships between the APIs, our providers, and our users. So they facilitate definition and documentation of our APIs so that we can figure out what APIs are available and who can use them and when can they be accessed. So to make APIs available, we need to make them available at the edge of our network so that people can access them. And once we start doing that, there's a lot of things we need to take into consideration, like security and DNS and routing into our organization. We might want to make use of API consoles so that we can see how they work. We want to be able to touch on lifecycle management, and we would like to be able to monitor our solution and see how our APIs are performing and whether they stay within our quality of service objectives. So the customer in focus today is Flash Mobile Vending. They are a local customer for us here in Cape Town, South Africa, and they were looking at leveraging APIs better within their organization. So Flash is a fintech company where they vend prepaid electricity, airtime, or data for cell phone companies. They perform payment solutions for our digital satellite companies. They sell vouchers like Google Play vouchers. They perform money transfers from person to person. And they also provide mechanisms for us to RICA our accounts. That is a mechanism to ensure that we register the SIM card to an actual person. And Flash literally handles millions of small transactions a day. And for them, reliability and speed is of the essence. So for Flash, their journey started as Carl put it, in their adolescence years. So right from the beginning, they had a view of using APIs to connect their mobile devices. And initially, this was more of an internal strategy to feed their own devices and their applications. But they realized that they need to provide a digital marketplace and an integration capability for other partners to embrace their service offerings and solutions as well. So they were looking around to find a product to use, and through one of their subsidiary companies, they were introduced to WSO2 as an API manager for their organization. And for them, it ticked all of the boxes. Flash was looking for a solution to make their APIs easy for their customers to find and integrate with, and makes it easy for their developers to provide these technical services without having to worry too much about the infrastructure and the networking side of things. For them, reliability and quality of service was quite important because of these high volumes of transactions that they use. And they needed to make sure that the solution that they pick is technically sound in that. So we got involved more than a year ago, putting down infrastructure, and Flash is busy transacting more and more of their transactions through the API manager, and they can see that there is a clear adoption of their services through such a platform. So let's have maybe a look at how this would, how the API manager would aid their API developers and what challenges they might experience. So traditionally, developers had to do a lot of work to expose APIs to the outside world. Obviously, you would start by developing software that exposes an API. And I can still recall my early engineering days where developing software using serial communications like RS-232 was used to send data from one machine to another before the days of the internet. And then came along ARCnet and Ethernet, and soon TCP, IP socket connections. And it was quite difficult to get things connected to each other. And I can still recall the days where I had to integrate with a Microsoft Exchange server that had this MAPI protocol that you could only get by signing a non-disclosure agreement and pay a lot of money. But luckily, we've moved on a lot from there, where we can now easily expose web services within our organization, whether it's RESTful or GraphQL or WebSockets. And then just the adoption of these open standards help us connect systems together and get past these barriers of these proprietary interfaces. So Flash had some similar challenges in, as I mentioned, on how to get these things out. So assuming we have developed our API using these technologies that I talked about, we need to deploy these applications now to the outside world. We will have to contend with our firewalls that we'll have to set up. We'll have to maybe set up a netting on our network level, or a reverse proxy to get our software connected to the outside world. We might have to go and buy SSL certificates to make sure that we can have a trusted connection. So all of these things must be considered before we can get our application going. And then we need to think about, what about multiple instances of our application and multiple versions and high availability and load balancing to distribute the traffic. So some of these network challenges will even have to be reviewed by our network team. And sometimes these change requests take quite long. And obviously we have to provide some sort of a security layer within our application to make sure that when people access our applications, that they are authenticated and authorized to do so. So we have to maintain user tables and password hashing functions, and we might want to go and implement roles and permissions within our organization, within our application, I mean. And then there's the user interface to manage those things, like when a user forgets his password and to send him a welcome email. All of these things developers had to do themselves. And during the life cycle of our application, we also need to dealing with redeployment of new hardware and maybe routing traffic to different locations and remembering to upgrade our SSL certificate once a year. And so you can now see that a typical developer, as with Flash, had to deal with all of these type of constraints. So the life of the developer was a bit difficult. So when we look at our API manager, the API manager has a component called the API publisher, which then provides our developer with an easy access mechanism where they can access a web interface. And it's simply a question of going through the screens in order to register our API within the system. With Flash, we are using more and more CI/CD pipelines to get our APIs into our store, which is like a more automated way to get that done. We can easily configure our APIs and define and expose the structure of those so that we can feed our Swagger file or our WSDL file into the solution, and it pulls that in, and it gets us to apply our security and apply our documentation to that. So today is not a technical presentation of the product or interactive presentation. So I've just taken some screenshots to just show you from a developer's perspective how easy it could be to just get started. And I'll just show you some of the screens. At our technical session on Thursday, we will be going into these screens more interactively and answering your questions around how to perform some of these functions. But as I've got on the screen now, a very simple user interface where the developer can easily access the various options or make the technology choices for the API. And by filling in total about 3 pages of information, we can easily go and register our application, describe to the system what are we trying to do, like give our application a name and give it some sort of context, a version number, and on the security screen, we might want to go and select what type of security mechanism we want to go and implement. And at Flash, we make use of JWT tokens a lot, and access tokens, opaque access tokens, which is very commonplace to give us a secure connection between our backend systems and our clients. And the developers don't need to code anything around this. So they can be fended by a layer in front of their application that takes care of the coarse-grained security concerns that we might have. So just a summary screen of some of the settings that the API manager allows us to set then to just get us going. And on top of that, the environment supports multiple types of deployments. Like at Flash, they've got some on-site servers for their QA and their development work. They've got a private cloud infrastructure to do more load type of testing, and their public cloud where they host most of their customer-facing solutions. And no matter which one of these 3 environments Flash has to deal with, this is already catered for within the publisher so that the developer can simply select in which one of these environments does this API apply to, and using some of the advanced routing technologies, we can make sure that no matter where that API is exposed within their business, they get access to their backend systems. So from a developer's perspective, what have they achieved by going through these steps? So they now have a gateway that sits on the edge of their network that provides these networking features that we talked about. They will now have a consolidated asset register of all of the APIs in the store, which is the next topic we're going to talk about, which then now provides the customer with the business and technical owner contact details if they want to interact with the developers internal to the organization. Immediately, the developer gets insight into how their APIs get used, how many people have subscribed to it. They can also get a good sense of volumes. And especially when Flash started to move over to different versions of the API, the insight into who is subscribed to which version of the APIs helps them to facilitate communication to developers that still has to migrate to the latest version, because surely we don't want to run multiple versions or multiple versions at the same time. So as I mentioned now, these multiple API versions all get their own URL so that each party can specifically address the version that they coded against. So if we have a look then from the API consumer's perspective, there is then another component that come into play, the store. And typically we see that our customers, our end users that want to use our software typically has questions around, well, what sort of APIs do you have for me? Or where can I find these type of APIs? And how do they work? In the past, we used to spend quite a lot of time interacting and onboarding our new customers, where we have to have one-on-one discussions with our customer on how our APIs work and exchange example code for them. Sometimes the client also didn't know who to contact or how to write the source code, and those interactions was needed. So the developer portal basically gives our end user a quick view into all of the assets that our business has available for them to use. In the case of Flash, we even customize the API store to present a specific APIs that is for any of their various brands. So we make use of multi-tenancy so that each screen looks specific to that brand. And whether it's selling vouchers or selling airtime, we can customize the look and feel of those APIs in that store so that the customer can find that easily. They can interact with the APIs, sort of to play with them, to sort of see how they work and interact against a staging system, for instance. And most importantly, and I'll show you a screenshot of that a bit later on, they are able to generate some good boilerplate starting code so that their developers can easily get going integrating with the API. And built into WSO2's support for over 20 of these languages, so that no matter whether you're a developer as a PHP developer or a C# developer, and whether you as the developer wrote your application in Java, it becomes easy for them to get source code that is specific to their environment, independent from the back-end implementation. So again, just a quick screenshot from one of these portals, for instance, where you can see this catalog of products that's available. So this is the standard version 3 look and feel that you have. And then for Flash, we then customize this look and feel to make sure that it fits in with the branding of the organization. And what's awesome about WSO2 is they give you this product that is sort of white labeled. So you can go in and with a little bit of HTML and CSS knowledge, you can spruce up the screen to match your specific branding and themes. So I talked about the software, the SDKs that you can generate. So by selecting an API within your store, depending on which options you make available. So in this case, we've got like 4 languages that we put on the display. And the developer can, for that specific API, can press a button and get source code that is aligned to that version of the API, as well as the security layer that is implemented behind the scenes. And it helps Flash to onboard their developers much faster than they used to in the past. Now, despite the fact that you've got the source code, you also need documentation. So Flash still spend a lot of time writing proper documentation in PDF format, where we package some screenshots and examples, and we do document how the APIs need to get used. And very often developers forget about this part of the development cycle, because an API definition like a Swagger or Whistler only gives you the static view of the API. And you only have documentation to describe the behavioral aspects of that. Like for instance, when you engage with an API, I mean, which of the fields inside a specific method call is required and under which conditions are they required? And for instance, if an error occurs, I mean, how do you deal with that? Should you retry? Should you change some of the variables? All of these must be described. So what Flash also does is they provide this high quality documentation, and then WSO2 has got this function where we can expose and attach this documentation straight within the API store. So where the user interacts with that API for the first time, the documentation is immediately available, which reduces this face time that they need to have with new customers as well. So gone are the days where I have to go through my shared drive to find that API specification I wrote 2 years ago. Everything is in the right place and easy to find. So just from a technical point of view, don't want to go into too much detail, but just want to sort of show you what we typically install within the components for an API manager. So we usually start off by providing the UI components through the publisher, and we put down for the customer the API gateway nodes. And so that is the mechanism that connects our network or the internet to our servers that we've got at the back. And we deploy components to manage our keys so that we can manage access control, and also the traffic manager that allows us the ability to control the quality of service of our API, so that when somebody maybe overuses an API, we can possibly throttle them based on the business tier that they've subscribed to. And then lastly, we put down the developer portal that I just recently talked about. So this is a typical installation of the product where you can have multiple environments, as I mentioned before, where you only need to deploy the gateway component, for instance. So at Flash, we are doing that as well, where we've got a centralized installation of the publisher and the store, and they are multi-tenanted so that we can brand it to each of the business units. And wherever the back-end software solution is, we deploy gateways in that specific environment, whether it's our on-prem or cloud installation, for them to then facilitate the access to the API. In Flash's case, they also combine the API manager with the enterprise integrator. So very often we've put little transformation or mediation flows between our API manager and our backend systems, because the legacy systems that they have was not conducive to the sort of restful look and feel that we wanted at the API layer. So in their specific case, without them having to change their legacy backend systems, we put some transformation layer on top of the old systems so that we can get the desired outcome in terms of the APIs and the structure of those APIs that we wanted to expose. And this was quite a common pattern for getting the legacy systems going in, as quick as possible on the public facing side. And obviously over time, as you evolve your software, you might want to go incorporate those improvements directly into your software if it is possible in future versions. And also for them, as Stefano mentioned, we can also integrate these systems with our identity management system. And here specifically, we make use of WSO2's identity server to provide federated identity management and single sign-on for their users to their Azure identity management solution. Because all of the in-house staff is is provisioned on Azure, but the public users, that the people that use our APIs, we provision within the identity server itself. So it gives us this mechanism of supporting these multiple identity providers simultaneously. So just at a high level, we'll look at this a bit more in our technical session. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of things that happen within the API manager, where we've got multiple transports that we can support. We mentioned the security, the throttling, the analytics. We have got some on-demand components that we can also employ through the ESB that I mentioned, and then mechanisms on how to get these message formatters and transports out back to our backend system. So that's just a quick visualization of that. So just to sum up, so what was now the purpose of them adopting the API manager? So we can clearly see that the developers have increased the cadence at which they can roll out software, which is good for business. The developers no longer need to deal with the infrastructure changes that we mentioned about. We've now assured that all of the APIs, even on the legacy systems, have got proper industry standard security mechanisms or access control bolted on top of them, and it's consistent across all of the software solutions that they are exposing. Their consumers can now find their products much easier, and business is getting more insight into how their customers are using their products. Flash seem to be very happy with their infrastructure, and we can clearly see how it's benefiting their business. Steve, I think that concludes my presentation. Thank you for that. As we mentioned, I'm going to give over to you, and I think we're going to deal with the questions a bit later on there.
Sonny, thanks very much. That was awesome, and it certainly brought it all together quite nicely. I think maybe it was cool that we had Stefano take over in second spot there, because I could see the connections flow through very well. I also think that one of the key elements that I took from what you were talking about is how you helped us focus on the business, the developer, and the consumer. And I think that's often areas where businesses don't get it right, because it's sort of, I think historically, maybe come more from the tech side, the developer side. He's trying to solve, or he or she is trying to solve the problem. But there's actually quite a broad spectrum in terms of that stakeholder community. And the successful businesses are the ones that are managing to balance all the stakeholders in terms of how they take this forward. And then the other thing that I picked up was around scale. And if I looked at what both you and Stefano have presented to us, it really is the essence of scalability. If you don't have much going on in the digital space and the API space, then fine, you can get away with things. But when you launch into genuine scale, you're going to have this sort of tooling at your disposal. And I think that's just the reality of a digital future.
Business is moving so fast, Steve, that you need these tools to help you keep up with the pace. And whether it's for your developers or for your customers, we need clever tools for us to grow our business fast. Especially now where a lot of us need to pull up our socks in terms of our digital offering to keep up with what's happening in the world today.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to perhaps trigger a wrap? I don't think there's a lot of questions that have come through yet, so I'd maybe encourage anyone to send any questions on the chat if they do have. But Paul, I'll let you just trigger a wrap for us.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I thought this was a great session. I really enjoyed Christhonie's session. I really enjoyed Stefano's session, and obviously I hope my session kind of set the ground rules for this. And I think, I think that what we saw there was exactly what we described. So what Flash are doing is effectively creating a digital product. They're driving it through APIs, and what you said we were aiming to do here today was to sort of bridge the high level vision with the reality, and I think that absolutely happened. So Christhonie really went through the details of what made it important for Flash, what brought in what the capabilities were that they needed to do that, to create these digital products, to create API products. And I think Stefano really nicely kind of gave the high level view of the product. The roadmap, I think, is really important. You know, one of the things that so I've worked a lot with a guy called Vinny Smith who founded Quest Software and is one of the investors in WSO2. And he always says, you know, that buying software is an investment in the future. You know, you're not just buying the product where it is today. You're buying a sort of hopefully a vision that this is taking you forward, that this is taking you and your business where you need to go. And I really hope that today's session has shown that we don't just aim to meet the requirements of today. We've got a strong vision of where the world is going, of what opportunities there are out there, and how we can enable them. And you know, I'm a really firm believer that this is kind of just as important as where the product is today and what it can do for you today is, you know, where are we taking it? What's the vision? Why are we here? And we strongly believe that, you know, that we're just at the start of understanding where the new business models are. I mean, so I think Flash is a great example of a new business model that wouldn't really be possible without digital technology. But you know, as I covered it quite quickly, but as I covered with those 5 different multi-party business models, we're starting to see new capabilities emerge and new opportunities, and this is just opening up everyone's eyes, not just to the technology but to the business that you can build on top of it. So I hope this has been a great starter session, and I don't want to just wrap up. I want to also encourage you to join in the detailed technical session on Thursday, but also to hear the vision of our kind of ideas around customer identity access management and all kinds of cool aspects that are coming in next week and then in the following sessions. So I hope this has been a good start, but I'm really keen that this is just the start of an excellent interactive virtual session.
Apologies, I was on mute there. Thank you. And in fact, that leads me nicely in just to, well, maybe before I do that, I just want to check if Christhonie or Stefano, if there's anything that you want to add to that before I close.
No, thank you. I think Paul perfectly sum up the 3 sessions.
Thank you, Stefano.
And I think it's for me exciting to get to be involved and to hear, and I'm still looking forward to listen to the other presentations that we're going to have next week and the week thereafter. And Stefano and Paul, thanks for your contribution as well.
Okay, so let me just share my screen and just do the close. It'll be very short. Into presentation mode. So like Paul was saying, there is still the deep dive session that we're hosting on Thursday. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to participate in this event all the way through the series. 6th of August is really where we close it out, and our final deep dive session on the Thursday the 6th. And Tuesday the 4th being the, what have I done? Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. Tuesday the 4th being the last primary session. So that's the sort of calendar once again. So hopefully pick you up on the 21st of July. And then, like I said, we'll skip that 28th and then do the last ones on the 4th and the 6th of August. In that session next week, Tuesday, our sort of client view is a very exciting business. And I think those of us in South Africa are seeing traction in the space of a Time Bank. And, you know, they certainly are on the right side of the current circumstances, having gone exclusively digital as a business. So we look forward to unpacking the identity and access management side of that. And for those that have gotten into this space, you will realize that, you know, APIs don't come, as Christhonie said, without integration. It doesn't come without identity and access management. These things all, you know, cloud, etc. They're all packaged together at the end of the day. So they're all key components of a comprehensive platform. So as I mentioned, Prabhath is going to sort of keynote for us, and we're really excited to have him on board as the VP of the Identity and Access Management business unit. Our Johnny Lewis will be back with us. He's been along the Time journey from the outset, so that's really cool. And many of you that have dealt with us for some time know about Johan, who's a solution architect on the Identity Server product. So he'll take over from Stefano. We haven't lost the global effect, so still a Cape Town and Joburg representation, but this time we're going to go a lot more east and a lot more west. So Johan will join us from Sri Lanka, a little dot down there below India, for those that haven't been. I suggest you go sometime once COVID is past. And then all the way at some ridiculous hour of the morning will be Prabhath joining us from California. And so that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope that you enjoyed the session. Reach out to us if there's anything that you need. Otherwise, we'll catch you on Thursday. Ciao, ciao.